This is Identity at the Center.
Hi, welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm your host, Jim McDonald. Unfortunately, Jeff Stedman had other activities going today and wasn't able to make this episode. This is a sponsor spotlight with a company called Nexis. They're at nexus-secure.com, and I hope you have an opportunity to check them out at nexus-secure.com/IDAC. Again, this is a sponsored episode, so it's a little bit different than our regular episodes. We're going to be joined by Dr. Heiko Klarl, who is the CEO over at Nexis, and that's Nexis, in case you're wondering. And Dr. Klarl is going to kind of give us what they do and how they help solve the identity and access management practitioner problems that we all kind of fight with on a daily basis. So welcome to the show, Dr. Heiko.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure.
Well, really glad to have you here. The pleasure's all ours. And we really want to learn about Nexus and what you guys do and what it is that you bring to the market. So, but of course, this is your first time on the Identity at the Center podcast. So maybe you can kind of give us your background, how you got into identity. Did identity choose you or did you choose it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say I've chosen identity. So back in time, more than 20 years ago, I studied computer science. And at the end, I had to kind of make my diploma thesis, and all the kind of security thingies have been super excited for me. And basically, I did research on service-oriented architectures and business process modeling and how to apply some security things with an example of BA Aqualogic security. So the listeners experienced in a longer time in the market probably remember still BA. Yeah, this was my step into the kind of identity and access management business and community. And after that, I did my PhD also in identity and access management and was researching on how to apply access policies into business process modeling. So you probably remember back in time with the service-oriented architectures, everyone had the hope that business people, business departments can model their processes and so on. And then was the question on how to keep it secure. Can we model it in a model language like BPMN and kind of having an process to create a model-driven approach to create all the models that finally are needed to end up into a policy for commercial off-the-shelf products. Yeah, and the rest is history.
And the rest is history. So now you're part of the industry and you are the CEO of Nexus. And I'm kind of wondering, what would give us the elevator pitch. What does Nexus do?
Yeah. Nexus takes care about authorization governance. So we're taking care about helping large enterprises, regulated customers such as insurances and banks, to do a proper role mining, role management, and role lifecycle management, or in a wider sense, going away from a kind of static authorizations, also covering the dynamic part like attribute-based access control, policy-driven based access control, and this kind of stuff. And we see that, especially in regulated challenges, it's quite cumbersome to really ensure that everyone is allowed to do what they should do and not more. And so all the kind of access review things are quite complicated. And looking back those 20 years in the industry, basically I started my career with Sun Identity Manager 20 years ago. Things are still not super great. So business managers are still struggling when they have to recertify and review access for their employees. And this is where Nexus comes into a better together story, sitting on top of large IGA products such as SailPoint, One Identity, Savient, Oracle, IBM, OpenText, you name it, in a better together story. And that's the most important thing. So we are bringing those capabilities that clients are missing and kind of ensuring happy customers.
Yeah, I love that better together story. So you mentioned a lot there. We'll get to dive into all of it. One of the things that I kind of took away from what you're talking about was creating this visibility over the authorizations. And I think that's such a key. It's one of the things that practitioners struggle with is how do you get visibility to everything, all these identity systems, identity silos that exist within your organization? And how do you make sense of it all? So, does that resonate with you?
App, absolutely. So the whole visibility part and getting rid of this of silos is something the whole industry is struggling. There are so many large enterprise customers out there. They have at least one, most likely two, or even more kind of IGA focused systems. An old one and a new one, and with an M&A merger, a third one. They will have some PAM systems and probably a couple of access management systems. And despite everyone is moving into a kind of consolidated identity and access management landscape, it just takes ages. So recently I was talking to a big bank here in Europe with roughly 2,500 applications. They have just managed to onboard 500 so far into their new IGA solution. And so basically they have 500 there, 2,000 there, which makes you as a manager, which makes you as a CISO, and finally as a CEO, completely blind whether you can really fulfill your compliance obligations. And building the umbrella on top of the systems is really that what helps. So getting the visibility across all kinds of IAM vendors and products and across all kinds of identity. And not only the visibility, I think a very, very important part is not just to create a task list of things that are not looking good, but also to provide a proper remediation, in the sense helping IAM teams and helping business departments to clean up things kind of immediately with automated remediations.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's a big part of the why, right? Like, how can you manage don't, what you can't see? You have to be able to see it to have the ability to manage it. And maybe you just answered my next question already, but I've got to think a lot of identity practitioners start with the question of, I've got an IGA system, I've got a PAM system. Why can't I just do what I need with them? Why do I need Nexus? Do you hear that much?
It depends to whom we are speaking, but we hear this question. So I would say to those identity practitioners that are experienced and that who have done it before, or kind of who have progressed and basically left the honeymoon phase with their IGA tool, most likely they have experience. It's not everything polished and shiny like they have probably expected. And then they get quite quick, oh, that's the problem Nexus is solving. And this is the solution we are providing. Okay, makes sense. Give us a demo. And then their understanding is quite there. When you're in an early stage, so you're starting on a greenfield approach or having something very, very old school, then people hope for sure that all the new products, the Magic Quadrant leaders, that they completely fulfill what they are expecting. And to be fair, the large players do a good job as well. They have matured their products. But when you're a regulated industry, you have so many additional add-ons, like maintaining a proper segregation of duty implementation across a variety of systems, really do a proper access reviews and recertifications, whether it's often direct assignment, but any policy has to be recertified at a certain point in time. And this is often a little bit too technology focused. So it might be doable for an IAM practitioner, but it won't be doable for a senior consultant in finance, for an HR manager, and this sort of non-IT folks out there in the companies.
So our mutual friend Becky Archambault from Gartner posted recently about this IVIP space and her research that was recently published about IVIP. And I noticed that you are one of the first person to reply to that post and comment on that post. So I guess my question is IVIP the space that you see yourself in? And even before that, like, do you feel like the boundaries of IVIP make sense to the practitioner?
Absolutely, I would say so. So I really appreciate that this term, this box, was coined by Becky and the Gartner team, and that discussion within the community started. Is it a platform? Is it not a platform? Is it just a bunch of capabilities, or so? I think what's really important is that there is an understanding. There is a kind of software, a kind of product out there that are building this umbrella function in order to fulfill this better together story and bring additional capabilities in some products are missing, and missing for often very good reasons, because larger players have to focus on other areas and not going super deep for specific industries or for specific use cases. And every technology or every area of technology that has a name is far easier to discuss. So when you do an industry comparison, when you do a tool selection, it's far easier if you have a label, if you have a name for it and say, okay, this kind of technology, I want to understand better. I want to make a deep dive. And so this helps at the end of the day, everyone, as you have a clear label, you can do a proper comparison, and you have an answer in the sense of a Lego brick, so to say, that you put on top in your enterprise architecture and say, exactly, this IVIP category is taking care about this in my enterprise.
And what I take from what you said is that Nexus worked with your existing investment in identity technology, which I think very few companies make these investments and want to walk away from them every few years. So buying tools that can kind of enhance the functionality seems to make a lot of sense. And I think that's a lot of what the IVIP space is about, right? Increasing visibility, increasing intelligence, and adding on to the capabilities. And I'm wondering, because there seems to be like a lot of companies that kind of their solutions fall into the space. How does Nexus differentiate from the pack?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. First and foremost, I think you are absolutely right, and that hits the nail. That IVIP or IVIP, as others are saying, ensures and saves existing investments into technology. When you have rolled out an IGA tool and integrated 1,500 or 2,000 application, nobody is really willing to rip it out 3 years after and say, okay, we start completely from scratch and are now bringing in another tool that's just slightly better. Because at the end, all the human-related processes, all the integration processes are the cumbersome work, and the work that really is creating a lot of effort for integrators, for consultants, for IAM teams. So basically, having something there that's well integrated, that works, where provisioning works, is super fine. And when there are just a few capabilities missing, it's far smarter to set something on top. And coming from the enterprise angle, you have IGA systems, and let's just PAM systems, for example. You want to ensure SOD. You can figure out on how to do it, or you say, okay, SOD is done by Nexis in their IVIP space, building an umbrella between IGA system and the PAM system, and you can ensure that no one really conflicts with your SOD segregation of duty policies. What's the difference between all the vendors that are there? I think IVIP or IVIP is at the very beginning, so it's kind of in the finding phase what's really included and what's really not included. My point is that the visibility part is a very important part. So figuring out across all types of identities and across all different systems of IAM, building this umbrella and bringing visibility to the business side. That's number one. Number two is visibility is not enough. Observability, like, for example, Martin Kuppinger, who was also a guest in the IDSC podcast in the past, says, is important. I do say it's remediation. Basically, we have the same understanding, not just creating a list of findings, because everyone knows his mailbox or his large to-do list. So basically, this doesn't make sense. Having an automated remediation for at least the most important findings or the kind of standard routines makes absolutely sense in order to get rid of a task list that's just too long at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think Martin has his finger on the pulse of, he's got this identity fabric concept that he talks about a lot in his presentations. And to me, it's spot on. It's like, you know, enterprises that are complex, you have tools all over the place. But when it comes to something like visibility, having tools all over the place, it's not the solution, right? You need something to be able to aggregate all of that. You brought up the idea of segregation of duties. To me, that's the perfect example. It's like, how does somebody's access relate across the enterprise and all these different identity systems that give access to business systems, and do those capabilities, or do, within your sets of authorizations, do you have the ability to, maybe it's not commit fraud in the accounting sense, but do things that you're not supposed to be able to do? How would you even have the visibility to that, given, a spattering of different tools in different places, or tools that really just don't show the full scope of all the access?
Absolutely. And this is the big challenge. And when you have the visibility, you're sitting on all the identity related data. And then the next place starting, we recently released ISPM, Identity Security Posture Management for IGA. Because when you have all this historic data, and when you have the current data, and when you will be aware about the future data, you can find out, is there something going on that's smelly? Is there some deviation from what does good look like? Let's say Jim McDonald is an engineer, and you have been an engineer in your company the last 10 years, and out of a sudden on a Sunday, you get high-risk HR privileges. That seems not to be okay, and I can immediately make a proper remediation. Some people might say, okay, that's now a corner case. A cyber attacker is preparing Jim's account, and probably it is. But see it from another angle. You're assigning some authorizations, some roles or policies to a new employee as a manager. And there are, in the US, in Europe, in everywhere around the world, there are this very, very common names. So you have this John Smith, and there are probably at large companies 20 or 30 John Smith, and 10 of them are working in IT and probably in the same department, but not in the same team. So the likelihood that you just picked the wrong is quite high. Or giving you another example, the movers process. And process that's quite common. You're moving from department A to department B, and most of the time you have some obligations to fulfill for your former team, at least for the next month, 2 months, or for the next quarter. And this is a friendly collaboration. So what happens? You're getting the new policies, the new authorization, the new roles for your new department, and you will keep the old one. Does somebody really take care about that you're getting removed from these policies? Most likely not. So the old manager doesn't probably really care, because he has you all the time, and probably he can approach you 5 months in the future and ask for help. And the new manager will probably forget it. So if you figure out, okay, that's a move, and I apply some dynamic policies on it, and I probably give them an end date, and the roles are automatically disappearing. Or before disappearing, I'm asking you, hey, Jim, are you really using those authorizations anymore? Do you need them in the future? Then I have an automated cleanup across the company. And this sums up in a really, really large work reduction, where managers don't have to review some things and confirm some things. They don't have a clue. And when I'm talking to customers, or when I'm speaking on a conference, I always love the example. When you're a manager, what's the best thing to do when you have an access review? It's always saying yes. And I can tell you why. The moment you say no, you take something away from somebody. So you always risk that your team is not working properly anymore. And then you're the bad guy who kind of messed up the company, or messed up a process, or probably messed up an important delivery. When you're just saying yes, That's not good from a security perspective, and that's really bad from an IAM perspective. But the likelihood that you are the guilty guy who has said yes yesterday and the company will be attacked tomorrow, and basically you are the guilty one, is super, super low. So most likely the kind of best individual strategy is just saying yes, you have less work, you don't have to think, and everyone is up and running again. And from this kind of very human behavior, you have to get away from and provide systems that are kind of incorporating the security and the safety mechanisms that the company is secured without kind of human interaction, so to say.
Yeah, so interesting that you brought up so many different use cases that resonate with me. And I was trying to think of what is the Uber use case. And I thought obviously large global organizations where there's some level of decentralization happening and identity systems are um, just by nature a little bit all over the place. But then I was thinking, imagine the private equity scenario where you have a portfolio of companies and maybe you're doing some level of shared service, or you have some people who have access across multiple companies and you're pulling that data back. I don't know, it just struck me as something that would be an interesting use case for this type of technology. One thing that you also mentioned that just I want to pick on that term platform for a minute. And you guys, you have a platform, right? You have multiple capabilities within the platform. And I was wondering if you could kind of enumerate those for us so that we have a better understanding of what is the total product offering from Nexus.
Yeah. So yes, we do have a platform, but I know also that some people don't like the platform term because platform can be gigantic and platform can be a bit smaller, or a platform can be in between. So whether it's a platform or not, I would say it's a great collection of capabilities that are playing together and creating value for customers. From a pure Nexus perspective, I would say it's a platform as a software product. From an enterprise architecture point of view, referring to the identity fabrics, I would say we are covering a lot of capabilities within the identity fabrics. And when you draw the line around, then this is our platform. So we've been talking about the role in authorization governance and the analytics piece, where we help you to handle access reviews, probably where we incorporate AI for access administration, but also kind of role mining and role discovery in order to help businesses to kind of clean up the space. We have a very cool health check format that's like going to the doctor, giving them a bit of your blood, and you get an examination later on, an examination report, and we're telling you what's good, what's bad, and how you can improve with on a written roadmap and strategy to get better.
That's really interesting. Can you tell me? Let's hone in on that health check. Then we'll get back to my. I'm sorry to pull you all over the place, but you brought up the health check, and that sounds like okay. This is something actionable that people can do. Tell us more about the health check.
Absolutely, and this is why I really love the health check. So you're a big company, and normally you are having a bit of a feeling that your role and authorization landscape isn't looking that good. But you don't have really a clue to convince your management to get additional budget. Your pain is probably not documented well enough to move on. And this is where the health check comes in. You get a Nexus subscription for a short term of 4 to 8 weeks, either on SaaS or as a container for on-prem, which makes it sometimes a bit easier as you don't have to handle all the data protection thingies, as everything stays in your company, especially for European companies. And then we help you to load in a copy of your production, so nobody in the company has to be afraid that the production environment will be messed up. It's then a kind of a read-only snapshot. And then we do the investigation. And after we've done the investigation, there are 2 potential outcomes. Option 1, you have done an excellent job. Then you can get off a certificate from us on how you create your authorization landscape looks like. You can go to your boss and say, hey, I'm the man, I'm your man. What about a pay raise or something like that? Unfortunately, that's very unlikely. That's very unlikely. So the far more likely cases that we have some findings. But this is good for you as well as an IAM team or an IAM practitioner, manager, whatsoever, because you have this documented findings. Okay, we have found your IAM landscapes looks like this amount of roles, this amount of direct assignments. Most of the time, it's kind of quite messy, to be honest. But we're not just finger pointing to those things that are not looking well. We give you also a roadmap on how to remediate things and how to improve things with a kind of effort estimation and how you can do it in the tool. So you're not going with bad news to your management and saying, okay, that's the bad news, because nobody wants to hear bad news. You can go to them with a solution. You can say, we found out that, and we have now the proof that we have really to take action on in order to make a proper security within our company. And this is my plan. This is my strategic roadmap on how to get rid of it. And this is a very, very good starting point to have really this data and fact-based discussion within the team, and not a feeling where some probably have a good feeling and some don't have a good feeling. The cool thing is you can decide on your own. So basically, whether you go ahead with us or not, the health check is a value on its own, because you have all the examination results there. You have a roadmap there, what you can improve. So you can use all this information for improving your landscape anyway. I always compare it to a real doctor. So you go to the real doctor and they take your blood and they examine your body, and probably they will say, Heiko, you're a little bit too heavy for your size. You can probably eat a little bit less fat and do a little bit more better nutrition, whatsoever. But after that, I can decide on my own. Do I change my behavior? Will I increase my sport activities? Will I change what I'm eating? Something like that. Or am I fine with it? So I'm not forced with the results from the doctor, nor our customers with the results from our health check.
Okay. So you might have said it, but and maybe I missed it. What is the charge to do the health check? How much do I have to get approved to pay you for this?
That's a good question. So it depends on the number of identities and the company size. Basically, it's always an individual offer. But let me say this: for most of the companies, it's something which can go either directly below a procurement level or short above. So it's ideally for the end of the year. Now it's November. So if you're looking for a last term activity, the Nexis health check, that hits the nail.
Okay, that's good to know. That's something that I think everybody should look into. Again, kind of go to nexus-secure.com/IDAC. I think the information on the health check will be there. Heiko, I so rudely interrupted you as you were kind of describing the platform. I want to give you an opportunity to pick up where you left off. And I'm sitting here thinking, you had mentioned the ISPM piece earlier. I know you're going to save the best for last, right? That's something I'm very interested in hearing about as well.
So I already elaborated a bit on ISPM. What I really love within ISPM is the license killer, which is probably something you don't expect within IAM. Why did we come to the license killer? So we've started with ISPM, that the one thing is assigning you, whether it's dynamic or static policies, for things you are allowed to do. That's good. But when you are not using things, you should lose it. So use it or lose it, as the saying goes. And from that, we said, okay, it makes absolutely sense to figure out, is an identity using the authorizations the identity has been given? Because when not, I can reduce it. And then basically I'm following the principle of least privilege on the one hand, and reduce my security exposure out there. For a couple of systems, this works very well. That's Microsoft Entra ID Governance, that's SAP in the cloud, as well as R3. And all those systems that provide us the data, directly or with an access to the theme. There are applications out there, to be honest, that just don't have information who's actually using what in my application. But given that you can provide us the data, we can ensure that we kind of cut down your privileges, cut down your authorizations to the number you're really using, which makes it easier, and the less direct assignments you have, the better it is for everyone. And then we come to thinking, what does it mean if it goes down to 0? You're not using the system at all. And imagine a large enterprise with 100K or 200K employees. How many employees have subscribed for this cloud service, for this Microsoft add-on, for this kind of stuff and this kind of stuff, and not using it, but also not giving it back? So have you ever heard someone approaching an IT team and saying, oh, I have too much software, I have too much privileges, please take it back? So having is better than needing. And this is the principle most employees are working. So when we figure out there is nothing left, we can remove you at all from the application, which means we can give a license back. And when you just do the math with a 100K or 200K headcount company, and we have just a fraction of those people that are not using a certain SaaS service, Salesforce license or something like that, it sums up into enormous amounts. And so this is really cool. And when we presented it to our customers, and also when we had this kind of discussions with them during the designing phase, we've learned that so many IAM teams are approached by license management. So can you tell us about how people are using the software? You're IAM, you're giving all these kind of access thingies. Can you tell us more? And most of the time, they have been suffering, and at the end, they have to say, oh, no, sorry, we can't. And we are now kind of covering this white spot and helping customers to follow the principle of least privileges on the one hand, and on the other hand, saving costs at the same time.
I think you gave a really good overview in like the why of Nexus and kind of like how you get the value. Now I want to talk about the how in terms of like how it actually works, because you talked a little bit about how it sits on top of an IGA system. It sounds to me like it leverages a lot of the data that's in the IGA system. The idea is then to provide managers with the information they need so that they can make good decisions during an access review campaign, for example. I'm also wondering, is there some kind of, so you're pulling data from the IGA system, are you pushing data back into the IGA system? Kind of talk to me a little bit about how that whole process works.
Absolutely. You described it very well. So we're sitting on top on those IAM systems, a lot of IGA systems, where we have very mature connectors, certified connectors, reading the data out and writing the data back. So when we are changing something, we can write it back at the same time, which is important, because otherwise you can't do any improvements or remediations. Then you are just on a kind of read-only system, so to say. The advantage is that companies save their investment. They have kind of rolled out, say, 0.1 identity or so, done all the integration, so it doesn't make sense to do it again with Nexus. So when we are sitting top of them, reading out the data and kind of providing it back is quicker for us, a shorter time to value for the customer, and saving a lot of integration efforts. When rolling out new applications, it's always the question, so how do we onboard now an application into my IGA system? And this is where our application onboarding comes into play, where we have this kind of very, very structured process to collect all this data that's needed for doing a proper integration into, say, 0.1 identity, Savvy, you name it. Why is that important? When you are talking to IGA practitioners, and you have probably done it so many times in the past, they are suffering all with speed of application onboarding and with costs. Coming back to a very, very simple example, doing the math, you have 2,500 applications, and you want to onboard this 2,500 applications, and it takes just one day for doing a bit of conversation with the application owner, sending him documentation, asking for documentation back, for some technical settings, but also for business settings. In Europe, for example, there is a finance regulation called DORA, the Digital Operations Resilience Act, which requires regulated companies such as banks and insurance companies to do a proper documentation about SOD, recertification cycles, and this kind of stuff. So it's a lot of things you have to collect and incorporate somehow, and we've glued that into a product. And now imagine you're doing this 2,500 times one day, and you apply a junior consultant, and for the sake of simplicity, just let's say it's $1,000 a day. Then the math is easy. Then we're ending up with $2.5 million. A junior consultant is just asking people in your enterprise, hey, can you give me this information? And probably they won't react. They're giving you kind of information in the format of choice, but not in the format you can really eat. And our streamlined process helps exactly to go there and kind of reduce the workload. And at the end of the day, you have this kind of collected set of information in order to either use the IGA software application onboarding tool that does all the kind of connector configuration, or when you're working with an SI or a managed services provider, they have often built their own procedures on how to do those things very, very quickly. You can use all the data you have collected with us, throw it into these tools, and kind of do a quicker onboarding with the sake of speeding up enormously.
One of the things that you've done throughout this episode is really done a good job of kind of sprinkling examples throughout. And one of the questions we always like to ask our sponsors is, how do customers show value, or how do they measure the value they're getting from the Nexis solution so they can communicate upward, hey, this is the difference it's making. This is why it's worth the investment. Maybe you can kind of answer that question, and again, kind of give some examples where you've seen your clients be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very manifold and very specific for the use case of what does success look like, and also a bit related to the customer for sure. But let me pick the example of access reviews or policy reviews for recertification for regulated companies that have. This is a thing that you have to do regularly, whether you like it or dislike it. And most of the time, this is one of the, let's say, Halloween month or horror month for the IGA teams. They have to prepare everything. They're reaching out to the business departments, and everyone has to give feedback within 3 or 4 weeks to kind of finish your initiative. And so one very important KPI for them is have things kind of speed up, and especially has the number of manual assignments being reduced significantly. So when you can assign a lot of authorizations via birthrights, via dynamic policies, I had earlier the example that your assignments run out automatically after a quarter, for example, or after you changed your organizational unit, something like that. You don't need that many recertifications anymore. So the workload is significantly reduced, and this is a KPI to measure. Another thing is we had a customer, also a finance institute. They wanted to put everything into business roles. So no individual assignment of entitlements or so. And they had a big initiative, and basically they succeeded to do it that way. And all those things you can put on your KPIs and really measure whether you have been successful or not. As my last example, I was talking about application onboarding or the authorization concept. And this is exactly the way. Imagine for the authorization concept where you have a written documentation about your policies, about review cycles and so on. And you have to do this for 2,500, 1,000, or even just 500 applications. And, the tool of choice for so many people is Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. It's a super flexible tool. You can do everything, but you have boundaries quite early. So you're starting, and at the moment you're ready, your documents are outdated because your system landscape has changed. back in time, 20 years ago, when everyone was doing waterfall, when there was probably 4 releases or 3 releases a year, you might have been able to kind of align updating your documentation with a release. Now everyone works in an agile mode. Agile teams are continuously releasing, and basically every day, something is changing in an enterprise IT landscape. And so it's a never-ending story, and it's a nightmare. Imagine you have now a system that basically gives you an alert when a non-compliant situation pops up. So you can measure, this documentation is not compliant anymore. You get a red traffic light, you can work on it and kind of move back into a compliance mode and reduce the time of being not able to have your proper proof of audits that you have to show up to the auditor, for example.
Yeah, of course. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit. And we always have one question. I feel like if we finish this episode and I don't ask the question, I'll I'll feel like I missed out. So how did you come up with the name Nexus? And it's Nexis.
Yeah. So I didn't came up. So the founder of Nexus and my successor, Ludwig Fuchs, who did also his PhD, by the way, at the same university in Regensburg, which is Munich metropolitan area. And he started the business and had to look for a company name. And this is at least what he told me. All the scientists, and they do have a research project, they are inventing this funny names, abbreviating some things. And sometimes the abbreviation is a match and sometimes it's not a match. And so basically it was next generation information security systems. And now you get it. There is no G in Nexus. But anyway, that's a kind of scientific wordplay. Originally, it was next generation information security systems. Now it's Nexus. And as I said, Nexis.
I love it. That's great. So you mentioned also Munich. Is that in Germany where you are headquartered?
So we are headquartered in Regensburg, which is an old medieval city going back to the Romans, which is 100 kilometers north of Munich, where I'm living. So it's Munich metropolitan region. From a US perspective, it's just a suburb of Munich, so to say.
You know, as you're talking about the solution today, I kept thinking to myself, like, this is needed by pretty much every organization that is of any kind of that is sizable. Is the solution focused on the European Union, or is it applicable? Do you basically market your product to the United States and Canada, or what are the limitations in terms of what geographies you cover today?
So basically it fits for customers around the globe. That's the important message. And when I started back at Nexus beginning of the year, I did a lot of traveling, meeting a lot of people, also in the US, attended various conferences, was talking to customers, was talking to systems integrators, also to get my own perspective on what they are saying. And it's absolutely clear, as you said, it's a match for US customers, for North American customers, for Europeans, and for APG customers, so for customers around the world. Our roots have been the German-speaking region, as Nexus was, and this is probably a story that's different to so many of your guests here in the podcast. Nexus was not an VC-based company. It was bootstrapped without any money and kind of running up by Ludwig, Michael, Matthias, and the team, which is a great success story, being there 15 years and the market and having done your thing, becoming mentioned at Gartner without getting a big load of money where you can invest in the product. On the other side, when you do so, you don't have this really big sums for GTM, for sales and marketing to kind of pop offices around the globe. This was not done in the past, but the team started 2 years before I was starting, 3 years, to kind of professionalize all this scale, or to prepare the scale-up phase, so to say, hiring marketing, hiring sales, and approaching the global market. And now we've get probably an extra traction on top of it, scaling across Europe and talking to US customers as well. Those who are listening and those who will be attending Gartner, IAM, and Dallas, Michael and I will be there as well. And we're more than happy to meet or having a coffee without any sales talk, but just from an identity enthusiast perspective. So it's always great to talk to identity people.
Yeah, I saw that you had that on your LinkedIn bio or your title, identity enthusiast, and I love that. I put on there identity practitioner because that's how I see what I do professionally as like I'm right in the game with folks who are doing it on a day-to-day basis, and I am as well from a consulting perspective, but I just look at us as we're all fighting the same battle. You mentioned conferences. You and I spent some time together at EIC. I think that's a fantastic conference. I did want to bring up the Gartner conference. So if people want to reach out to you to meet you at any of these conferences, what's the best way to do that?
What's the best way to do? So either drop me a message on LinkedIn. I'm the only Heiko Klarl out there, so I'm quite easy to find. We can put a schedule link or a contact link on nexis-ck.com/IDIC as well. So that's probably the easiest way to reach out to me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know you're somebody who is like kind of an open networker. So anybody who's kind of in our industry, if they connect to you on LinkedIn, you're always open to those kind of conversations. The one thing that we like to do, kind of our tradition around here, is to always end on a lighter note. And I've been to Germany a few times now. I've been to Frankfurt and I've been to Berlin. I've never been to Munich, but putting all that aside, I want to know from you, what is the thing in Germany or the place in Germany that people should visit?
I would say that's for sure Nexis headquarters, Ratisbon, at the Danube River and Munich. And I can tell you why. So Munich is a great city. The right size, very international. We do host Oktoberfest, which is a great event for so many people out there. And it has the right location within Germany. So it's a short way to the Alps, to the mountains for those who like hiking. It's not that far to Italy, where you can go either to the sea or enjoy the mountains as well. It's a little bit more up into the north, to the North Sea and Baltic Sea. But it's a very lovely place. And why it's Ratisbon, Regensburg, our headquarters, not just because it's Nexis headquarters, but you are more than welcome to visit us in case you're doing some tourist stuff there. It's an old medieval city, going back to the Roman times. That was my friend Andrea Rossi from Yamons visited us just a few weeks ago during our customer event, and in the summertime as well. And it feels like an Italian city, and all the things that are looking like they are old, 500, 600 years, they are really old. So especially for Americans that know very, very new and modern city with a great skyline, Regensburg is probably the opposite, being there in a time machine, experiencing an old medieval city that was not destroyed during the war.
Yeah, that sounds really great. So Andrea visited, it sounds like right around Oktoberfest, right? I mean, that's the time to come to Munich. And well, I think it's either the time to come or the time to avoid. What do you say?
So I like Oktoberfest very much. So I would say it's the right time to come, but prices are high, for example, and you have to take care to kind of adapt your drinking to Oktoberfest style, in the sense the beer is larger and the beer is stronger. So most likely you can't drink as you're used at home and have to slow down a bit to be fit for the next day of Oktoberfest as well. But if Oktoberfest doesn't work out, and Oktoberfest is at the end of September, which is often a false friend and a trap, the summertime is really nice. So in end of September, it's getting already cold. But in July, August, the temperatures are quite high and nice. And it's not as hot as in other places where you can't go out without any AC or so. This is a great time for visiting both Regensburg and Munich.
Well, sounds like very wise advice, and hopefully we all get an opportunity to take you up on that and come over and visit. Was there anything else, Heiko, that you'd like to leave as kind of like parting advice or parting words for the identity practitioners who are just learning about Nexis and what you do?
So there is a new report out there, fresh from the press, from Martin, not from Martin Kuppinger, but from Kuppinger Cole analysts, from the analyst Nitish, an executive view on Nexis. We'll put it up to the nexis-secure.com/IDIC website as well, which is a great read. Basically what we've been talking about today, written from the analyst perspective in 3 to 4 pages. So it's a quick read when you're commuting or when you have just a couple of free minutes to work through. I think that's really great. Otherwise, as said, I'm regularly attending a variety of conferences. I'm attending Identibeer as well. And Enrique, our joint friend, is organizing one, very, very likely for Gartner IM as well. So be there if you see me, if you recognize us, say hello, and I'm more than happy to have a chat, whether it's about identity or any other topic you're interested in.
I'll definitely be there. So add me to the list. And if you get a chance, if you're out at Gartner, please come out and meet us. Thank you so much for doing this, Heiko. One more time for everybody, it's nexis-secure/IDAC. You'll have that paper from Kuppinger Cole there for folks to get a copy of, which I think is fantastic. Those papers that Kuppinger Cole puts out are always top notch. That's going to wrap up the show for this time. Find us on the web at idacpodcast.com. Find us on YouTube by just going to idacpodcast.tv. And we'll talk to you all on the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.